you have a tendency to work better when you are being observed by someone. For instance, employees work better and more diligently when they are being closely watched by their managers, and the children behave better when they are being watched by their parents. This, my friend, is known as Hawthorne Effect. The Hawthorne Effect is the inclination of the people who are the subjects of an experimental study to change or improve the behavior being evaluated only because it is being studied and not because of the changes in the experimental parameters or the stimulus. The Hawthorne effect refers to the fact that people will modify their behavior simply because they are being observed. The effect gets its name from one of the most famous industrial history experiment that took place in the Western Electric's factory in the Hawthorne suburb of Chicago in the late 1920s and early 1930s. And to understand this better, me, Udeshna, and my friends Ishika Kumar, Tanisha Jadhav, Sakshi Shah, and Samruddhi are here with a small experiment. So let's get started.
So in this experiment, we will be showing a focus on Hawthorne effect in a non-working setting. And for this, we gathered 6 pairs of participants for which we are going to check the change in their behavior by giving them a task, that is to solve a 252-piece jigsaw puzzle. And we will be giving them a 30-minute time limit. Now we had two conditions for this. One was the experimental and one was the control, and each condition was attributed to 3 pairs of participants. The change in behavior will be checked in terms of their performance, that is, the number of pieces solved, their speed, and interaction with each other. When we say the experimental condition, we mean that the participants were made aware of the presence of an observer, whereas there was no such awareness in the control condition. After the 30 minutes, the progress of each participant were noted.
The experimental group solved 177 pieces in total, whereas the control group solved 164 pieces in total. But on a closer look, we noticed that the control group or the unobserved group solved 77 pieces incorrectly, which makes their total score 87. No such mistakes were observed in the experimental group. We observed that the experimental group seemed to work in a more organized way with their puzzle than the control group. The control group had divided their work and seemed to work more individually, whereas the experimental group was working on the same portion together rather than dividing their work. The experimental group worked at a variable pace, whereas the control group was consistent in their pace. The group under observation began with a fast pace, after which their pace was mostly consistent, and it increased as the end approached. There were no major changes in the speed and pace observed in the control group, and it was mostly consistent. One similarity that we noticed between the experimental and the control group was that both the groups seemed to be pretty invested in solving the puzzle, despite the presence or absence of an observer. After debriefing, the experimental group mentioned that they felt a sense of pressure because of the presence of the observer, and they were also concerned because of the time limit. No such comment was made by the control group.
Overall, the experimental group or the observed group solved 90 more pieces than the control group or the unobserved group. We observed a significant change in their performance as well as their behavior. Usually, we see experiments based on the Hawthorne effect in the work environment, and according to the systematic review published in the Journal of Clinical Epidemiology, the researchers concluded that these effects clearly happen. Similarly, we observed the effect in a non work environment. Hence, this experiment concludes that the presence of an observer influences the behavior of the participants. There is further scope for research on the Hawthorne effect in a non working environment on a larger scale. We hope this experiment gave you a better understanding of the Hawthorne effect. Thank you.